lights, feasting, and festivities. Diwali, a festival that represents the victory of good over evil, is celebrated by millions, not only in India but across the globe. One of the biggest and most resplendent festivals in India, it is also celebrated with great enthusiasm in other countries as well. A festival that unifies every home and every heart.
Just the numbers in India of people celebrating Diwali are astounding. And then you add the numbers of the diaspora, and as well as the members of the diaspora using Diwali as a platform to educate others in their home countries about Hindu culture and traditions and teachings. It absolutely has become a global phenomenon.
The word Diwali comes from the Sanskrit word Deepavali, which means rows of lighted lamps. In northern India, the festival finds its origins in the Hindu epic Ramayana. People celebrate the Festival of Lights to mark the return of Lord Ram to Ayodhya with his wife Sita and brother Lakshman after a prolonged exile of 14 years. The most widespread custom is the lighting of small earthenware lamps filled with oil on the night of the new moon to invite the presence of Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth. In South India, Diwali signifies the victory of Lord Krishna over demon Narakusara. There are many stories around what exactly Diwali commemorates and why it is celebrated.
When we talk about the Ramayana in particular, we think of actually one particular version of the Ramayana, the most popular, of course, being the Ramcharitmanas, the version which was penned by Tulsidas in the 16th century. But we often forget that there are actually about 300 versions of this great epic that we call the Ramayana. And of course, the oldest amongst those is actually what we know as the Mool Ramayana, which is said to have been recited by the sage Narad. And then, of course, the next version was the Valmiki Ramayana, which is the oldest extant version that we have. Even if we just simply look within Sanskrit itself, we have very, very significant variations. For example, we have the Anand Ramayana. And in the Anand Ramayana, there is an abduction not of Sita, but of Kausalya, Ram's mother. So you see the variations in the Ramayans that we have. Then we have the Adbhut Ramayana, in which Sita is born to Ravan's wife, that is Mandodari. And in fact, in this version, it is Sita who slays Ravan, not Ram. Down south in Tamil Nadu, we have the Kamba Ramayana, that is also known as the Ramavtaram. And in this Tamil version, the story ends with Ram's victory in Lanka and his triumphant return to Ayodhya. But in effect, the Uttarakhand is not even there in the Kamba Ramayana.
Diwali is a multicultural festival. Apart from Hindus, it is also celebrated by Jains, Sikhs, and some Buddhists. A festival that goes beyond borders, belonging to all.
There is a Persian version called the Razmanama that was commissioned by the Mughal Emperor Akbar. There is a Jain version known as the Paumachariyu, in which Ravan is killed by Lakshman, not Ram. In Buddhist literature, one has the Dashrath Jataka, in which Ram is described as a bodhisattva. And then, most interestingly, there is the Mappila Ramayana, which is the Ramayana narrated from the Malabari Muslim perspective, in which Ram even refers to Sharia law and is a sultan. So, I mean, the point is that the number of ways that the Ramayana has been described and the way this narrative has flown from one region to another is indicative of the significance of Ram as a global icon of sorts.
Look at this picture. This large footprint in Thailand is believed to be that of Lord Hanuman's, the great devotee of Lord Rama. Similar physical traces were also found in Malaysia and Sri Lanka, where Hanuman is believed to have landed millions of years ago. Many versions of the Ramayana have been written since sage Valmiki first composed his epic. The epic Ramayana has been one of the greatest influences in Southeast Asia. This is the historic city of Ayutthaya. The second capital of the Siamese kingdom, now Thailand, is named after Lord Ram's capital of Ayodhya. The great epic is believed to have reached this region as early as the 7th century through trade routes from South India. Buddhism was the main religion of the kingdom of Ayutthaya. But Hindu scriptures like the Ramayana had a major influence too. Most Southeast Asian countries have a regional version of the Ramayana. In Thailand, the epic is known as Ramakien or Ramakien.
The Ramayana traveled outside of India. So, for example, there is Thailand, which has the Ramakien. For 400 odd years of Chakri rule, the capital of Thailand was known as Ayutthaya, similar to Ayodhya. And the earlier name of Thailand, please recall, was Siam, which is derived from the word Shyam, a word which implies the dusky color of Ram.
Interestingly, the institution of the Thai monarchy has its roots in Hinduism and Buddhism. The reigning Chakri dynasty was founded in 1782, and the monarchs from this dynasty are called the Rama kings, after the Hindu god Rama. The current monarch, King Maha Vajiralongkorn, is officially known as King Rama X. He was crowned in May 2019. This group of men are performing the traditional Kecak dance in Bali, Indonesia. Based on the story of the Ramayana, the music drama was developed in the 1930s. The performance depicts a battle from the Ramayana, in which the monkey-like Vanaras, led by Lord Hanuman, help Lord Ram fight the evil Ravan. And then there's the popular Ramayana ballad. Since 1961, it has been performed regularly at the Hindu Prambanan temple on the border of Yogyakarta, the central Java provinces. Performed in the Javanese style, in 2012, the ballet entered the Guinness Book of World Records as the most continuously staged performance in the world, as well as involving the most performers. Indonesia is the world's most populous Muslim country. Around 210 of its 242 million citizens are classified as Muslims. And yet, the sprawling archipelago's fascination with the Ramayana is not new.
Indonesia and specifically Bali provide a model of interreligious harmony, where Hindus make up, I think, 2% of the population. So it's by no means, a country where you have a critical mass, and yet you see the Ramayana celebrated not just for its spiritual significance, but it is appreciated for its cultural place in the country and in the culture. Then you look at places like Pakistan and Bangladesh, where institutionally the religious minority face a lot of obstacles.
It is believed the Ramayana came to Indonesia around the 8th or 9th century, written in the old Javanese language. It became known as the Kakawin Ramayana. In 2019, to mark 70 years of diplomatic ties between India and Indonesia, Jakarta released a special commemorative stamp based on the theme of Ramayana. It depicts a scene in which Jatayu, the demigod in the form of a vulture, fought to save Sita. Have you heard of the tale of Ravana's daughter, Subanmacha, who tries to stop Hanuman from building the bridge to Sri Lanka? Instead, she falls in love with him. It can be found in Cambodia's poetic adaptation of Ramayana, Riamker, which means glory of Rama.
The Riamker is the national epic of Cambodia. In this version, we have a completely new character also called Sovana Macha, a mermaid who Hanuman meets on his journeys. And of course, Riamker is not just a literary work, but is also retold through sculptures, paintings, dance drama, including adorning the walls of the great Hindu temple, which later became a Buddhist place of worship, Angkor Wat.
Located in northern Cambodia, Angkor Wat is said to be the largest religious monument in the world. Built in the 12th century by King Suryavarman II, the vast religious complex is steeped in history and legend. Sculpted scenes from the Ramayana and the Mahabharata adorn the temple walls. It is a bridge to the past and a famed example of cultural transfer. And it is not the only one.
In Myanmar, for example, in Burma, we have the Ramayana, or the Burmese version, which is it's actually the Burmese version of the Dashrath Jataka. In this version, Ram is known as Yam, Sita is known as Mathida, Lakshman is known as Lakhan, and Ravan is Yavana. Then you have a Tibetan version of the Ramayana, which was discovered in the Dunhuang caves of Xinjiang. Surprisingly, it has rather little Buddhist influence, but according to this version, it is Ravan who abducts Sita, but by tunneling the earth rather than grabbing her, as is depicted in traditional versions of the Ramayana. Similarly, in Malaysia, we have the Hikayat Seri Rama, in which Ravana has a daughter, but when it is predicted that she will cause his downfall, he packs her into a copper box and commits her to the waters. Eventually, she is found by another king and is adopted, and later on she marries Rama. And of course, the Malaysian Ramayana is the theme of the shadow puppet play, which is known as Wayang Kulits. And then we have the Philippines version, which is the Maharadia Lavana, in which Ravan is depicted having 7 heads, not 10. And the famous dance of Singkil takes its inspiration in the Philippines from Ramayana.
Fascinating, isn't it? There are hundreds of tellings and retellings of the Ramayana. It is a cultural phenomenon that transcends boundaries and speaks to each of us individually and uniquely. Now let's look at how Diwali is celebrated in different parts of the world. The 5-day festival is known as Tihar in Nepal. Some of the days are focused on the worship of animals that are associated with Yama, the Hindu god of death. An endearing tradition is Kukur Tihar, or the Day of the Dogs.
So Kukur Tihar ma we celebrate dogs, we worship them for the love that they give us, throughout the year, for companionship. It's sort of a gratitude that we pay back to them for all and for so much that they give to us.
Dusi and Bailo are traditional songs that are sung during the festival. The bands move door to door, singing and entertaining families. The Festival of Lights is celebrated by the Indian diaspora throughout the world. This is Diwali Nagar, or the city of Diwali. Established in 1986, it is the hub of all Diwali celebrations in Trinidad and Tobago. The festival was brought to the nations of the Caribbean by people from the Indian subcontinent, who arrived to work as contract laborers on sugar plantations in the 19th century, after slavery was outlawed in the region's British colonies. Their descendants are now the largest ethnic group in Trinidad, comprising of nearly 40% of the country's population. Diwali is marked as a national holiday in the island country.
If you look at, say, the diasporas in Guyana or Trinidad Tobago, Ramayana is kind of a core central text, and it still is told in the oral tradition. And so, you might have different variations because the diaspora in Trinidad and Tobago largely came from Uttar Pradesh as well as Bihar. The type of versions that are told in Trinidad and Tobago might differ from, say, the retellings in Bali or the retellings that you might see in Malaysia, where you have more, the diaspora is largely from Tamil Nadu.
Diwali is celebrated with similar fervor in Guyana, Mauritius, and Fiji, where Indian expats have built vibrant communities. India has the world's largest diaspora population. 18 million people from the country live outside their homeland. And this vast population celebrates the festival with the greatest joy and excitement in the four corners of the world. In 2009, Barack Obama became the first US president to host a Diwali celebration at the White House.
Amrutangamaya Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Donald Trump too lighted a diya at the White House.
Back in 2007, the Hindu American Foundation, for which I'm an executive director, was involved in both drafting and pushing for the passage of the first ever Diwali resolution. And now you see Diwali being celebrated at the city level by mayors, at the state level by governors, and resolutions being passed or dinner parties being hosted by members of local and state government. So it really has been a very steep growth in terms of its recognition and celebration. When you're a religious minority in a country, you don't get the day off. So very often celebrations are occurring, at least as a community, on the weekends. So they may happen, Diwali oftentimes even stretches over a 3-week period as a result, because on the weekdays it might be difficult.
In 2016, the US Postal Service launched a Diwali stamp, capping 7-year-long efforts by Indian Americans and influential American lawmakers to commemorate the Festival of Lights.
In Diwali, we are also celebrating not only the victory of Ram over Ravan, but we are also celebrating that event where one realizes that if you want to reap any rewards, which is the Amrit, you also first need to churn the ocean. So in that sense, it is a far deeper thought process, which is that, listen, if you are expecting reward, then first be prepared to churn the ocean.
Whether we're talking about compassion, non-harming, truth, non-greed, non-anger, all of these things for any individual, if they embrace even a small ounce of what Diwali signifies in terms of those positive virtues, I think the world is going to be a better place. Right now, we're facing so many challenges as a humanity, whether it's the pandemic, whether it's climate change, or whether it's interreligious tensions. The idea that we should recognize the divinity in one another, to treat one another from that foundation with compassion, to not be greedy, to not take so much of the earth. All of these things are transformative messages that the Hindu tradition offers, and Ramayana serves as a reminder of all of those values.
The festival of Diwali binds people. It has a deep spiritual meaning. It is a symbol of the victory of good over evil, hope over despair, and of knowledge over ignorance. Although there are many stories around the celebration of Diwali and many ways to celebrate the occasion, these themes are universal. They speak to the heart.